high maintenance.
I was sent to Egypt on 3 days' notice, and when I got there, she was one of the presenters, along with Andy Lakey and Marianne Williamson and a bunch of other people that I met, who I've continued to have various kinds of contact with. David Kessler was there, actually. Yeah, he was with me. Oh, she went because Elizabeth Kubler-Ross couldn't go. She was supposed to be on that trip. Yeah, so that's why she went, and of course that's when I first heard about IAMS, although that was in '95, and it was May '98 when we had our first meeting. So it took a little while to get me in the mode, but they were working on me. In any case, it's been 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 great years.
No, it's been 12 years.
In any case, we just spent some time together last week, so we're just kind of picking up on where we left off, so it's been great. So please give a warm welcome to Kimberly Clark Sharp. She's going to give you all the details.
First detail, coffee. I live in Seattle, where if you've not been to Seattle, you get addicted before you pick up your luggage. And where, in our little four-corner business area, there are now the 13th espresso places going in, and they're all thriving. So, but because I had a long cross-country flight and was sitting by a window, I dehydrated myself. And people of a certain age in the room know what fun being cooped with 2 seats between you and an aisle and what you need in the back of the plane does. So now I'm having my fluids, and thank you for listening. What else? It was very embarrassing to check in this morning at 4:25 a.m. when I got to the airport because 11 family members went to see our youngest daughter perform. I'm an empty nester, so daughter left for college a couple hours away out of Seattle, and another daughter's in the Marine Corps. She even flew in. So I thought the least I could do would be to show up myself as a mom. Did all that. Of course, had to pack. Got back at midnight. Finished packing at 2:08. Remembered I had an article due on Tuesday. I'm here until Tuesday. But here's the, so that can keep you up in the hour of rest that I got. So in my hour of rest between 2:08 and a little over an hour, and an hour later, I did write the article in my head. Sadly, of course, I've forgotten it all because I'm tired. What a waste of time. I could have been asleep. So anyway, back to the embarrassing thing at the airport. So, it's American Airlines and it's kiosk central. You don't talk to humans much anymore in the airport, at least the way I travel. So I walked up with my luggage, and the man said, you're going to have to check those bags. And I said, I only have one. And he said, I'm talking about the ones under your eyes. No, he didn't. I actually said that to him, but I wanted to give some total strangers some cute credit. No, I said, you need to check these bags. And he looks around at my one suitcase, and I said, no, the one under my eyes. And then people behind us got really irritated because he was trying to rip the bags out from under my eyes and check them for me. Seriously, couldn't get them off, so told me I had to go in on carry-on, which meant I had to check my purse. And no, I'm just being me. So my name is Kimberly Clark Sharp. I've already warned Ted with the camera that I'm a cricket as a speaker because I get really excited about, everything. In terms of a purpose, I could talk to each one of you. I want the microphone. Invite me back and let me do this, because I feel like I have something in common with most everyone that spoke. I mean, even in odd ways. I'm my favorite color. Purpose? Yeah, I can just tell you right now, save yourself a ton of money going to workshops and buying books and souvenirs.
I just bought your book.
Oh, that you can have. So never mind. No, I'm serious. Take a breath with me. And breathe out. And it's purpose. It's so simple. It is so simple. That's it. You breathe in and out. If you want to speed up, if you want like all the, what I call the razzle dazzle, you want all that, a little service helps. putting yourself out, doesn't matter to what, a buck for the garbage man at Christmas, because he's got 4 kids and no one tips anymore. I mean, it's endless opportunities to be of service. And I find, though, that the most affordable way for me, did I mention tuition, is smiling. That serves my purpose. And I meet extraordinary people because of the grin on my face. And yeah, so I suggest breathing and smiling, and then, you're done. That's it. You go on the other side, you'll thank me later. This is the cheapest advice you're ever going to get.
Thank you.
Then, where's Judy? I want to, holler out, girl, because she gave me some energy work and said I was wide open. Words I only hear from my dentist and OBGYN, so thank you. Who was a transplant? Social work. Where'd the social worker go?
Right here.
What kind of transplant?
Heart.
Ah, blood.
Yes.
Yeah, so you read the book. I founded the first department of social work for the first bone marrow transplant center in the world, which is all in the book, written in my own, in case you're not getting it, irreverent way, because there wasn't a department, so they put up these big, what I call them in the book, cotex pads, so that the patients would have privacy as they spoke. Well, a big pad, well, that's just this sad story of being a social worker. It's like whatever junk's left over from everything else. Then it goes to the social work staff and the patients that they represent. So by the book, did I mention tuition? So there's going to be something different about my talk today because of tuition. And anyway, so I wrote this book called After the Light because I had terminal cancer. And I'm here with my prosthesis, and it's breast cancer, and you'll just have to decide
Which one?
which one. And I'll take all the hugs you got. Squeeze them. Anyway, I wrote After the Light because I had 10 months to live. I just lost a baby. And I thought, I know so much to inspire people, even in my really darkest days. So I threw everything I could think of into that book. It was over 1,000 pages long, and William Morrow and Company published the hardback version. And the editor said, we're not publishing a 1,000+ page book. You have to chop off 800 pages. But I'm a Gemini. I have to communicate. No, you don't. That's my other side talking. Because I always listen to the voices in my head. And it's a good thing because they guide me as well as hold me up for ridicule. For instance, I'm vain enough to care about what I'm wearing. Hello. Where are my bathroom mates? Show of hands. Ladies, yes. We've had wardrobe consults and I have my own group going. Yeah, just the John. First stall on the right for those of you that are interested. The men's wide open. Oh, there's that word again. 4th time in one talk. So anyway, so I'm happy to be, vain. And the last time I was here, which was a few years ago, I was filmed, but I turned out like some dark wraith-like thing that Diane wouldn't even show me. And so we're doing it again. So I thought, okay, this time, I'll lose weight, I'll go shopping, and then I'll stay up for over 24 hours and demonstrate the bags in my eyes and the fact that I haven't had a bath. And if you do hug me to find out where the egg is hidden, have a little scent on because I'm not sure what I'm doing under here. So anyway, I died. That was before tuition. This is our first one in college, and it's a private Pacific Lutheran University. The Lutherans know how to stiff a family for tuition, I tell you. It's the same as Yale. I'm just wondering why I came back for all that. Or could she go to Yale? By the way, someone said we're not religious. That would be Diane. I'm Lutheran. Kansan. Howard Storm, who was here at one time giving a speech. I don't know if he told you this, but he did ask God Almighty. The one question I didn't ask, we'll get to my near-death experience by dinner. He said, what is your favorite religion? And it was Lutheran. No, it's not, I'm just kidding. No, to quote someone that isn't even here, but an old friend, the answer to that was, whatever brings you closer to me. So, married a Lutheran, I was raised a Lutheran, kids went through Lutheran educational system. It sounds like we're from Chicago, where there's a Lutheran church on every third corner until you get up to Wisconsin, when it's a bar on every third corner, then a Catholic church. And then the Lutherans are out in the fields, so. But I am a Midwesterner. I was born and raised in what is now Greater Kansas City, Missouri area, but on the Kansas side, in a place called Shawnee Mission in Johnson County. Johnson County to this day is still the third highest income per capita county in the United States. And I'm going to tell you, I was into that big time because my daddy was rich and my mom was good looking, and I got to say, where's our 88-year-old? You two would give each other a run for their monies. Looking good, man. And so's my mom, about that age. So my father, who died a few years ago, was the senior partner in the law firm that still represents all of the tobacco companies in the United States and Canada. I grew up wanting nothing on the material level. It's what I call see a pony, get a pony. Also in After the Light, I described coming to our home. I mean, I had a nice family, I was loved, but it was post-World War II. There were many agendas in this country at that time, including how to stop feeding children fresh food and things out of a can. It was a science for my mom. And those of you of a certain age will remember that the post-war era of cans. Why go outside where your corn is growing in the backyard when you can open a can of Del Monte from Illinois? And then when my cousins bought the Illinois Del Monte ventures, and so then we really had lots of cans. So anyway, life was good. To quote myself again, visiting us was like checking into a really nice hotel. You know, there were nice feelings there, a lovely, large German-Scottish family, Lutheran. I was the firstborn, so I was all that was, all that is, and all that will be in the family. And I was the first grandchild to boot, so, I mean, just ratchet it up. So now we've got, like, money, firstborn, and the biggest cheeks that you ever saw. And so there was just, you know, I just grew up feeling like my attention needs were being met, my material needs were being met, and I didn't care about anything else. I cared mainly about the fact that I really hated change, and I really hated cold. And those were my agendas. And school was like an afterthought. Anything was an afterthought. It was just my, you know, duty to not get cold, which in Kansas is like not getting cold in Chicago on April 14th. I want to say that I was invited for January and February, and I said, I am not coming during the winter. And that just shows you how much authority I have. 2 days ago, I heard it was going to snow. So, we had service. I had a sense of service. Sterling. My grandmother had, I mean, down to the Russian Samovar or something, I wanted on. I mean, you know, so that was for Sterling service, there was that. And then we had indoor and outdoor help. And, you know, I'm just so politically incorrect now, and excuse me, Rutgers, but I had a mammy. And she was my mammy. So, but she wasn't what anyone called the Rutgers ball players, by the way. I'm still just kind of calming down from that, because I'm a blonde, and I'm used to be calling them, you know, it's blondes and blacks have a lot in common. We're terribly discriminated against by people who think we're all dumb. You know, so I kind of I align myself with minorities because I think blonde should be a minority, unless you're on television, your name's Brittany. And then you shave your blonde hair off, so I guess it really doesn't matter. Anyway, life was grand, except that I also hated change in addition to cold. And I hated change to the point that I actually, by 21, was engaged to a boy I'd known since the 7th grade. My full name is Kimberly Clark Sharp, which would mean that I was raised a Clark. His name was Bob Clark. I thought, this is great. I will marry Bob Clark, and I will not even have to change the monograms on my towels in the bathroom. I thought it was a pretty practical plan. When I graduated from high school, by the way, my aunts wanted to know where I was registered. I mean, it's like this, you know, and this was the days of debutantes. I came out, and not as gay, as a girl. What was that about? Hi, I'm a girl. I have money, so like, by the way, Kimberly Clark is also the name of a very famous tissue company. So in an RN income bracket, the boys asked occasionally if I was the Kimberly Clark, and I always said yes. Because it bought me one good dinner while they sucked up to me. Then came the crash, and bye-bye, but I figured, well, if that's all you were after, who cares? So I was going to marry Bob Clark. I also thought I'd get a driver's license. Well, actually, I had a learner's permit, but it kept expiring, you know, over the years. Again, I didn't need to drive anywhere. Then I was in Kansas State University, and that was from 66 to 70, when the rest of this country was absolutely erupting with protests over Vietnam and racial riots. You probably heard of that in Chicago. Something about 5 people and the Democratic Convention, I'm trying to remember. You know, women's rights. I mean, everybody was fighting for rights, except in Kansas. And nothing has changed in Kansas. I love Kansas, but hello. So in K-State, in the middle of Kansas, there was nothing to uncharm our existence. You know, there was nothing, unless the dairy barn got caught in the wrong shift of a wind and, you know, filtered down onto the dorms, and but all the farm kids called that perfume, so that even wasn't as stressful. By the way, who's on the board with the Arch? Where'd you go? Hi. In St. Louis, on the highway, during that same storm, we'll talk. I was at your hotel looking for Nancy Bush, but that's another story. You guys were the Arch. But I have pictures of the funnel. There are 3 funnels that y'all missed. Yeah, so there's like your hotel and funnels. So we'll talk later. They didn't drop. And again, I grew up in Tornado Alley, so this is just nothing but a photo app, because we don't get that in Seattle. So anyway, I decided I was going to get a license and a car. So my dad, on May 25th, 1970, took me to the Shawnee Mission Department of Motor Vehicles. A day I don't remember on this level, which would be the level of at least 5 senses, but you know, pretty much consensual reality. I remember that I was waiting for my number to come up, which God has a sense of irony that I can't miss, and you're going to learn more about while I talk to you. So, how classic, waiting for my number to come up. I mean, I even had to be like an old joke. So, that's all I remember. And then I told my dad that I felt funny, and he said, I want to sit down, and he said there weren't any chairs, and Zappo. So I'm going to tell you what my dad's memory is first, because that's, well, a point from which I can launch. So according to my father, my number did come up, and I appropriately chatted with the clerk. We were leaving the building, literally stepping out the door, when he noticed that my complexion was what he called white on white. And then I went into dead weight, which is a heavier weight than, well, a live weight, I guess. What's the opposite of dead weight? But anyway, you know, there's no resistance. It's a sack of flour, and real hard to catch somebody. He tried, but the weight of my body was unexpectedly heavy, and I flopped out on the sidewalk. There happened to be a uniformed nurse walking by. She saw me collapse. 2 calls were made, because this is before 911. One was to the Shawnee Mission Department of Motor Vehicle. No, that's where I was. Shawnee Mission Department of Volunteer Firefighters. We didn't have our own paid, but good guys. So they were coming and running, and then the closest hospital was where the ambulance would come from in those days, and that was St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri, if you're familiar with that area. And by the time the fire department arrived, according to my father, the nurse was very concerned because she hadn't been able to pick up a pulse. And was saying that in increasingly agitated voice inflections, which was not helping my dad. Which is why I tell healthcare professionals, you know, I spent most of my life at this point in academic medicine of one kind or another. University of Washington, where I'm a retired clinical assistant professor. By the way, here come all the credibility. It's not funny. I worked hard for this stuff. But anyway, I'm an MSW, a licensed clinical social worker, taught death and dying for 20 years at the University of Washington School of Medicine, founded the first social work department for the world's first bone marrow transplant center, was named at the time one of the 40 most influential people in the Pacific Northwest in the field of death and dying, founded what's now called critical care social work, and so a lot of textbooks. So on one side of my life, it's very grounded. I'm married to one guy. It's not Bob Clark. Don't tell Bob. And no, I'm married to Mr. Donald Sharp, have a family routine, you know, go grocery shopping. It really grounded, happy person. But then there was this part that had a near-death experience that's as high as a kite, that wide open word again, the phrase. I didn't know this was my entree into what, I came back with some wowzer spiritual gifts. So I, though, had no awareness at all of being quote-unquote dead. But my dad did. And as a parent now, I don't want to know how he felt. But fire department arrived. They had a brand new portable ventilator. It had two features: to ventilate, but also to extract objects that might be blocking the airway, like candy in children. That's why children don't run with scissors or candy. And or for someone in this community, last time I was in Chicago, a piece of food that gets stuck in the throat, blocking the airway. And I must mention that the last time I was in this fair town, I was attending an IONS international conference on the subject of near-death experiences. The hotel had a sign that said, you know, "Welcome International Association for Near-Death Studies." And across from it was a pub. I was in the pub, and it served really good food. And a woman started choking on food and stopped breathing. Nobody in the joint knew CPR, except yours truly. I was not happy. I hadn't done CPR in almost 30 years, and that was at O'Hare Airport. So if you're not feeling well, I'm your girl. We can meet outside or down here, a little chest compression, a little lip lock, never hurt anybody. So the two times I've done CPR have been in here in Chicago. The guy in Chicago died, but not until he got to the hospital. And I go on this trip, I don't have her name, we'll find out if the woman I successfully resuscitated had a near-death experience. That I'm waiting to find out. And wouldn't that just be the coolest thing in the world? But there were people with cameras there who thought it was really funny, and I have the photos. So the ambulance had come for that woman, and I was standing outside by then as they were loading her body into the back of the ambulance. And of course behind me was the "Welcome, near dead," you know, and so anyone with a camera was taking photos, and it was just incredibly ironic. But anyway, it was my turn in May 25th, 1970, and I was the one lying there, and I was the one the fire department came for, and I didn't have anything obstructing my airway, but it was new packaging, according to my dad, Beloya, no less. Ripped open the packaging, slapped that sucker on my nose and mouth, hit the on button, but it was on vacuum mode. And I hadn't been breathing, at least noticeably, for enough time. Anyway, so what happened is that it sucked whatever oxygen was left out of my body. That's really radical. So I feel like I could, you know, I keep trumping people. How did you die? Well, I mean, it's like going to prenatal classes. My contractions were so good. Well, that would be postnatal, I guess. Am I tired? Did I mention tuition?
Stand down.
So there I was dead, and I was still blonde, but I had changed from Caucasian to something more out of Africa, because without blood flow, especially at the site, according to my dad, I just turned black. I mean, there was less than no oxygen there. It was like knuckle high skin looking, and also my fingertips, and he wasn't looking at my toes. And the fire department knew immediately what had happened. They weren't idiots. They flipped the switch, started pumping air in, but enough of my lungs had collapsed. And by the way, our lungs are wet and sticky suckers, and they work fine once they come in contact with themselves. And then they have a tendency to stick. And it takes sustained, in-hospital, steady air pressure to slowly, like stand back. So you don't want to be doing that in one big push of a button. But indeed, that's what happened. So now I've had the life sucked out of me, literally. And now they're just barreling air in. Well, my lungs were going, that wasn't working. So the air had to go somewhere. And it went to my skin. Now, we do have more than one organ in our body that will expand. But I can tell you, after a perfect 10-month pregnancy and middle age and this experience, that our skin will expand as much as you want it to. It's the ultimate balloon. So I was inflated. It's called epithelial emphysema. It's fatal. So, the name of my book originally was The Woman Who Would Not Die, and I'm with you. I mean, who was it who just had endless, 2 airplanes. See, I told you I trump anybody in the room. Car accident, forget about it. Try going down in an airplane. It's up the rail. Not. No, I was called the near-death terrified. But anyway, there I was. So I was, at that point, no medic can pronounce death anywhere in this country. It has to be by a doctor. But medics have a way of euthanizing things. I know because I'm married to one. And so they said something in effect of, I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do. Again, not what a parent wants to hear. Then a man who my dad, for his whole life, called the Good Samaritan, but came out of now this ever enlarging crowd. And if you're from a small to medium-sized town in the Midwest, which many of you may be, you know that on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, somebody dead on the sidewalk becomes theater. You gotta get down to the DMV, there's a girl dead on the sidewalk. And the word goes out, and there weren't cell phones then. So, according to my father, there's just more and more and more of a crowd, gawking. And this man came from behind and with super strength was plucking people away from him, and then picked up the firefighters and plucked them away like they were feather light. And he was swearing like a mule skinner. So we're going with the Chicago plan for his place of origin, because, no offense, but you all do know how to use a string of swear words like I've never heard before, particularly when there's construction on the highway, which is all the time, so I get to hear it. I told you I was from the Midwest. I know how highway systems work. Broken. It's the weather. We can't help it. We need more taxis. So anyway, I'm lying there dead, and this Good Samaritan comes up and does what we now call citizen CPR, the breath work and the chest stuff. And he swore and worked and swore and worked and swore and worked, and finally said, I'm not getting a GD thing, to my dad. And we don't know what happened to him, but he's always been in our prayers. And people have said, do you think he was an angel? I don't know, because I was not alive. So I don't know. You ask my dad, but he's with whoever that was. Probably they're probably both deceased. Well, my dad definitely is. Let me clarify that. Shut up, Dad. I hear you. No, I'm not. I'm back. So I was pronounced again. St. Luke's ambulance arrived. My body was thrown into the back of the ambulance. My dad jumped in. Off we went. Things went sour in the ER. I recovered. I have since pulled my medical records because I wrote about a lot of people in Naphtha Light, and I didn't want to be, the precursor to A Million Little Pieces, you know, the book that Oprah bought into, and turned out none of it was true. So actually, all but 2 stories in Afterlife are signed off, including from my dad. So that's his story, though, not mine. Here's what happened to me. I don't know if I can do this holding a mic. I'm a person who talks with hands. So here's what I remember. I had no awareness of being quote-unquote dead. It's just that I could hear a woman's voice on my left saying, "I'm not getting a pulse, I'm not getting a pulse." And I was speaking with her with, honestly, the same sense of reality with which I'm speaking to you right now. It felt normal and real. And I kept assuring her that, indeed, I had to have a pulse or I wouldn't be speaking. And I was trying to be very clear. And she was ignoring me. And this kept going on. Now, I didn't know what to do about her. And she was getting so upset. So I don't know if it was like, you know, a near-death snit or what, but I decided I was out of there. One thing I believe, having talked to now, you're going to hear about the first person I ever interviewed who had a near-death experience. It was 30 years ago this month. And next week will be, in fact, when Daniel Brinkley's here, that will be my 30-year anniversary of both research and clinical work in this field called near-death experiences now. So I mention that because one thing that we all seem to have in common, if there's any degree of consciousness at that time, and there not always is a sense of letting go. So if you find yourself nearly dead and you want to go on, let go. If you don't, hang on. Because it's a rough ride, as someone said. It's not that the near-death experience is rough. It's the recovery. It's not for the faint-hearted. But if that's what's going to happen to you, then it'll all work out okay. So, I just let go of that whole scene, and I found myself in a completely different environment. I was warm, because remember, there were 2 things I didn't like, change and cold. And so here I was, having an emotional reaction. So I say, we take our emotions with us. I was relieved. And I also knew that I wasn't alone. And back to that sense of purpose, I felt like I did have a purpose. It was to stand there and wait. But I had confidence in the waiting, like I was waiting for a bus that was right on schedule or whatever. So into this scene of heavy, dark fog is why I couldn't see what was around me. And I've mentioned standing on this spot before. I invite you to go look at movies from World War II that dealt with the afterlife. Afterlife, there's a slip of the tongue. Afterlife. Movies made during and immediately after World War II on the subject of the afterlife, all included gray, foggy material, you know, and I can just list the wonderful movies. A guy named Joe, Waiting for Mr. Jordan. I mean, it goes on and on. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful movies worldwide had this element to them. So I believe that there's this corridor of consciousness that we all go through. It's just some people make a U-turn and come back, and I was sort of in that space. But it didn't matter because blasting into this grayness was a light that I have, I'm a wordsmith, but I have not found adequate words to describe the love, the brightness, the knowingness, back to the love. I mean, and again, I wasn't trashed as a kid. I have no terrible abuse stories. I was loved, but not like this, nor have I been since. I think if I were in the flesh, I would have been just blasted to smithereens. I don't think physically we're designed to withstand that much energy and love, but I believe that we come from there. And the reason I do is my own bias, because in the presence of this light, I said, homie home. Homie home, I later learned was something, back to that firstborn thing again, it was something that my parents said I would say as a toddler, learning language, when we'd be away from home and we'd pull back into the neighborhood and I'd recognize, you know, the park or whatever, and I'd go, homie home, homie home. And because of the cheeks, it was one of those gitchy goo moments. They remembered it. I don't. So that's what I said, but it wasn't in English. It was in a combination of math and music. I love taking on skeptics. And skeptics who say, oh, you just get what you expect. I have no skills in math or music. At church, I'm asked to lip sync the hymns. And math, it's tax time. Actually, I do the taxes, it's scary. Well, no, I do the extensions. And then I do the taxes on the extensions. And so we just extended, but for some reason, for a long time, until within a year, I was in charge of writing checks and doing such things in our family, which was a very scary place to be because I don't have math skills. So every January, what I've done is just closed our bank account and opened a new one. And then you know within about 3 weeks what you got. And it's after Christmas, so we have no money to spend. Keep some cash aside. It's not a bad system. And then we've never balanced a checkbook. I've been married for almost 21 years, and we just fly by the seat of our pants. Did I mention tuition? And so, yet I was in charge of the money. And, you know, by this time, it gets a little nervous in our family because we're beginning to lose track of who did what with what. And then by summer, we're giving up. And of course, by Christmas, I'm just having a free fall of spending because we don't have a clue. Then we start all over again, and it works. So anyway, math and music, not going to happen to me because I don't have skills in that area. In fact, my piano teacher, some of you mentioned the flute and other means of musical expression. My piano teacher quit me in the 7th grade during Song of the Volga Boatman. Da 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 da. Although I have siblings that came after me, they're musical prodigies in any instrument or voice work you care to have. So math and music, though, how do you describe that to someone who, like me, who doesn't get it except when you're dead? But then along came Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that's sort of a iconic movie now. So when the mothership came down, it was da 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 da, Song of the Volga Boatman. No, and then you remember that there was this guy on a keyboard, and he was imitating the notes, and then these huge cables trailed away from the keyboard to these computers the size of trailers, and the computers computed the music into math, and the scientists, as it turns out, had been following this little schematic for the whole movie. That's how they knew where to go to all these places. They were looking at math coordinates. So I want to know what Steven Spielberg, I want to tap that man's brain, find out who he really is. Is he here? One of these days, Steven, I'll find out what inspired you. So, I'm not a complete idiot. I ask questions, a la Howard Storm, like, why are we born? There's a good one. And by the way, I had so much cognition going on that it was like I could step out of myself and go, well, that was an awfully sophisticated question to ask. And the homie home, the light, for me, by the way, would be my creator, or God, or if said with a certain amount of reverence, Bubba. I don't think, and I'm not even saying the light is God, any more than I'm saying that light, which is very bright. By the way, this didn't hurt my eyes, and it was brighter than that spotlight. But it'd be like saying that light is God, which is discounting the little pieces of fragment of metal that are inside of the glass, and the glass itself, and the wires as they go through the building, and as they go out to the street, and as they go out to some source of water somewhere. We could start with, Lake Michigan, and then that depends on the weather, and, it's just not as simple as, I see a light. It's much more complicated, and yet just as simple as that. But my creator came as this wonderful, loving, bright light that encompassed everything about me and did answer my questions with less sophistication than I thought I was asking. So, for instance, and again, invite you to get after the light, and because everything's in there. I mean, I dumped everything that mattered to me in there, and it's not about tuition, really, it's my mission. So I won't totally expound, but I did ask why we were born, and the reason was because you begged for it. It's like we're all really, really, really wanted it, really wanted it. I have since personally interviewed, eyeball to eyeball. Now I have a 30-year head start. Well, in 1995, someone stopped counting, and it was 2,000. and then I still run a support group and talk to near-death experiencers, new ones all the time. So I don't know where I am, but I've talked to a lot of people. And indeed, and I have 3 specialties: frightening experiences, suicide attempts, and the biggie is children. The Melvin Morris book that Diane mentioned also is me in it. There were 5 of us that did the children's research. Only research that's been done on children that, you know, involved a paycheck before or since. And one little boy being escorted back to life by his angel, but by a door, and all these people, he called them people, like they looked like humans. They were pounding on a door really loud, it was distracting, and he said, "What are they doing?" And the angel's kind of just dismissive and said, "Oh, they're just waiting to be born. We banged on the door to get here." So it might be a hard knock life, but it began with knocking. So, and then the rest is a thrill ride. So we begged to be born. Gee, what else did I ask? Didn't think about purpose. I wish I had. It would have saved me so much time. Until I found out it's just breathing in and out, smiling, and being a nice guy. Well, you might want to do more than that, you know, hygiene, makes more friends. I mean, there's some rules of living that you just, you know, dental stuff you need to pay attention to. All sorts of purpose, you're going to work on that smile. I asked about, not about sin, I wasn't that cognitive or even aware of sin. Despite being a Lutheran and hearing about it every Sunday, I had a tendency to leave that and forget it, and still do, I might add, because I know a lot about hellish experiences now too. And I want to add something there as well. I wish I had this in the can. I don't. My experience with the light, you know, I honestly don't talk about my near-death experience much, which is why I'm interrupting myself and being silly. I don't have this hammered down because I don't have words. I have metaphors. But I wanted to know about bad guys or something like that. And what I got back from that is there aren't any. God loves everybody the same. At least this light, or my creator, or your creator, whatever. We might really screw up down here, but it doesn't mean that we're not loved. And now that I'm a parent, I get some of that. You know, my kids can really irritate me. They can break my heart. They can make choices that I just want to bite them. But I don't love them any less. I don't love them unconditionally, though. I wish I did. I can't match that feeling I had. I can't even possibly. Anyway, so this was just going on and on. It was deliriously wonderful. I was very happy. And then I was told that I had to go back. And again, I did what any fool would do. I said no in this math and music thing. And it became like a tennis match. It was like, yes, no, yes, no. And if you've been there, you gotta know it's like nice in heaven, being with God. It's really nice. It's really nice. And you'd think I'd had a really hard knock life, again, to those knocks, but I didn't, and yet I was resisting with all of my heart and soul. But Star Trek said it best: resistance is futile. And I'm here to tell you that you can argue with God all you want. It's fine. Just that eventually God's going to win. Free will, yeah, limited. Just teasing us with the free will. Just enough rope to hang ourselves. That's free will. So I was sent back, and you know, I failed to mention that I didn't pass my driver's test because I couldn't parallel park. So now I'm spatially challenged, I'm mathematically challenged, and musically challenged. So you know, you're hearing all my faults. Here's the point: I couldn't get closer than 6 feet to the curb, and then I kind of worked it in so that it was 4 feet. And that's when the driver's ed person said, "You're going to have to work on this, hon." And I said, "No, I don't want to. This is, you know, why? I'll just never parallel park. I mean, in Kansas, that's not an issue. You just pull in. There's plenty of room. Why would I ever parallel park?" There was a reason. It's because I was sent back and I was going to have to parallel park my own body. I should have paid attention to the directions. Once forward, once back, pulling straight. Because I missed my body by about 4 feet. The distance that I had been just shamed over for not being able to operate my vehicle connected to that space. And so I couldn't even get my spirit into my, what I like to call myself a recreational vehicle, but couldn't get myself in there. And I had humor at that time because here I just come back from the most incredible contact that I can imagine. And I'm goofing around because I said, oh my gosh, I can't even park myself. And I thought that was, like pretty funny. So I'm laughing. But the body isn't. And then there were a lot of feet, legs between the body and myself. And I then got a little concerned about what? That's when it began to occur to me that I should be in there. And I didn't know how I was going to make the leap. But then this man came along. I don't remember any swear words, but it was a good Samaritan. Hi. And the minute his mouth touched mine, it was like that physical contact. Most of me went back into my body. Here's the thing. It was not just the physical contact. It was the love he felt for me. I was a total stranger, and he was filled with compassion, despite the language. I had just been with the greatest love of all. So this was like a lighthouse beacon. I recognized and still do any fragment of that light I'm attracted to, which is why I smile all the time. I have a prison group, speaking of, and I don't meditate, so they're on their own. But I do see lifers who have had spiritually transformative experiences once a year in Monroe Penitentiary in Washington State. My boys, they're bad guys who've had good things happen to them. And the point is that, back to, I want to make another point about prisoners since it came up earlier too. God really does love everybody. These men, after having, and they're never getting out of prison, no parole. I don't even want to know what they did to get there. But because of an angel in their cell or a near-death experience while they were shot robbing the bank, or it just goes on and on. They're really wonderful people. So, given the right circumstances, the least of us can be the best of us. I have such hope for humanity. It's like against all odds, and I'm just rooting. So anyway, so here was compassion, and it was love. So I was drawn to it. And then if you're in the healthcare field, I went through his body and into mine. Going through his body wasn't a graphic, organic experience like, here's the brain, there's the gut, you should have had breakfast. It was emotional, again, starting with that love and compassion and just, again, good Samaritanism. My dad nailed a good name for him. Again, was he human or not? I don't know. I never saw him except when I wasn't caring, except for I was just being a complete, love slut. I just wanted to go for wherever it was. And again, advise you to do the same. Trains, planes, and automobiles. You can have my life. Back to the smile. Sadly, things went a little awry. This was probably, my dad thinks this point might have been the emergency room, but interestingly, I heard a woman call my voice, and I'll bet for 20 years, I thought it was a nurse in St. Luke's emergency room. My dad happened to mention, oddest thing, every person attending you was a man. Respiratory therapist was male, nurse was male, doctors were male. Very unusual, especially then. So I don't know what the woman's voice was, never did find out, still don't know. Calling my name, I could not get to her voice. I wanted to, and I'm wondering if this isn't what a coma is like. You can hear things, but you just can't do anything about it. And it was like being, and things were terrible in my body, by the way, because my body temperature had dropped, according to my medical records, which, by the way, said primary. If you want to know what, I keep forgetting to tell people in any talks, because I'm not used to this much talking about myself. Are you happy? Back to that cold, but my chart said a primary cause of, they didn't say death, but a problem. I was disguised because of, it was either cardiac or a simple thing. For some reason, my blood pressure bottomed out. But what, of course, tipped me over into resuscitation for an hour and a half, by the way, according to my dad, an hour and a half. But I looked young, and my big shot lawyer was there, plus, 100 people from Shawnee Mission. It wasn't like special. It was just point being, breath, love, jet lag, no sleep. Could you play that back, Ted? So I can find myself again. I'm on enough rabbit trails here to feed you dinner. Well, here's the point. We'll just take it back to I'm dead. Oh, yes. Oh, miserable, cold, body temperature, medical records. Except that they said, except for the problem with a snafu with a ventilator. And I read that with a shock. You can't chart like that these days. But snafu with a ventilator, when I read that in preparation of the book, I thought, some snafu, it like killed me, please. So I was very cold. My body temperature was in the mid-80s in the ER. That's death. And but I was alive in there, and I just couldn't let anyone know. And it was really cold. It was really dark, but it's like I could see. But I was running around endless dark hallways that seemed to be blocked by what would be like really heavy, dank, awful tapestries. And just shoved aside. I was alone. And having an Edgar Allan Poe moment. You've read Poe, House of Usher, Buried Alive. I watched too much television as a kid because I went right there and I was terrified. And because near-death experiences have no time, they're timeless, then everything feels eternal. So for eternity, I was stuck in my body. I don't recommend it. I'm going to interrupt with another thing that I love to tell people because I have given this some thought and I need both hands. So if you excuse me for one moment. For those of you who haven't had children, you've missed the wonderful opportunity of watching cartoons over and over and over again. And if you're a good mom, you watch them again and over and over and over again. And so I've seen a whole lot of cartoons. And Aladdin came out when our youngest, my only actually birth child that's alive, it was the Aladdin era with Robin Williams as the genie. And we had to watch that over and over and over again. And suddenly I got it. So here's my metaphor for coming back to your body. Whether you're near death or not, for those of you who are just saying, oh, I wish I could have an out-of-body experience, careful what you wish for. So I'm going to quote Aladdin from the Disney movie, Aladdin. Aladdin asked the genie, what's it like being a genie? And the genie says, what's it like being a genie? All the powers of the universe. Itty bitty living space. So, if you've had an out-of-body experience, when you come back, at least for me, you have to be squished. It's like getting ketchup back in the bottle. I mean, it was not easy to do. And so, and I was bigger than myself. I'm still bigger than myself, even though my skin has expanded. And we won't go there, but straighten out the midriff. So it wasn't fun. And I was really, seriously, desperately unhappy. So I called out to God again, and I was in this math and music stuff, and God kindly came back, nice. Not any bright light, just communication. And so there we are in total darkness, and I'm just glad that there's God with me now, because I felt like the absence of. And God finally said, okay, all right, I'm ready. If you want to die, fine. God is a Jew, so go already. And this opening, like a window thing, appeared. And I just knew somehow from God that that was my heaven and the window was my boundary. And that if I crossed that boundary, if I went over the sill, there would be no coming back. So let's see. Cold, dank, terrifying blackness, heaven. Cold, dark. We get the idea because heaven for me, again, skeptics, not what I expected. On the other side of heaven was a Kentucky calendar picture, a state I have yet to visit. It was like bluegrass kind of blowing in a breeze. It was very beautiful. Hills off in the distance, unclouded sky, except not in colors that we've ever seen on Earth. The color chart was there, but the intensity, never have seen. Even in the 80s, Watching Miami Vice did come close, but their outfits still weren't bright or intense enough. Here's the other thing. Every blade of grass had consciousness, had full awareness. I believe everything created has another someplace. You know, was I in grass heaven? I don't know. It's where I wanted to be. It was balmy, it was wonderful. I wasn't going to do this quietly. I wanted there so much that my sense of myself was that I was diving in head first. But our Achilles heel, it seems like I was almost the way through when I discovered, I've said this to this group last time I spoke, but it made me laugh then, I'm going to repeat it. God watches television and he loves Columbo. Because that was my interaction with God Almighty at that point. I was almost all the way through. You know, at the end of the episodes, get more sleep next time. Columbo would go, to the murderer and then nail that person just when they thought they were almost away from it. Well, that's how God was. It was like, one more thing, ma'am. Yeah, God. I got something to show you. Yeah, God. I want it over there. I really did. But instead, God pulled a pretty good hat trick. What I saw, I had 3 separate experiences, and it was a life preview, not a life review. Maybe there just wasn't nothing to review. You know, okay, I made my bed in March of 1954, and bored now. So, at a life preview, and I saw myself in a place, all I knew was that where mountains met water, so it sure as heck wasn't Shawnee Mission, Kansas. And then I saw people, and this was like portraits kind of, with not names, but relationships underneath. So there was best friend, colleague, next door neighbor, very mundane, nothing spectacular, but they were all strangers. I had no idea who any of these people were. Jumping ahead, I've met all but one. Have I told you the story about my best friend? Because it's not in the book. Okay, I want to tell you right now. After a near-death experience or something similar, work on your social skills, people. Because it's really hard to integrate socially back in after, at least for me, a near-death experience. Because when I did meet the woman who did, what it said best friend, that's how I greeted her. You're my best friend. And I said to her before, she wanted me as a best friend, like she wanted a second menstrual cycle a month. This was the most prickly person that God was ever going to throw into my path. My best friend was a porcupine. She did not want me as a friend. Thank you, you nutcase. And I kept chasing after her, but you're my best friend. I saw you on the way to heaven. No, thank you. And if she were here, she'd tell you I simply wore her down. There came the day when she said, all right, already, I'm your best friend. Shut up. Yeah. So it's been a hoot, because I'm living my life forward. I'm living my memories. That'll twist your mind. So then the piece de résistance, because God also speaks French, in the music, I saw myself being of service. So it wasn't that sterling stuff or indoor and outdoor staff. It was me actually helping people. And I said something effective, cool, I was back. I made my choice. Still haven't been to Kentucky. Did bite down hard on the service thing. But I came back and it was like the genie back in the bottle. Things didn't fit. I felt bigger than, I felt like I was outside my skin. I had nothing, I had no roadmap. The Lutheran Church didn't speak of such things. Nobody did, because in 1970 this was nothing. And there was not enough people reporting it or being resuscitated yet or whatever. And so I had nothing except that I had to get out of Dodge. I just felt too small for my body, too small for Bob Clark, poor guy, too small for my family, poor people. I wanted to find this place where mountains met water. And so I figured it'd be that way, go west, young lady, go west. So who went to Colorado? Oh, hi, birth had passed. I was a hippie by the time I got there, to one state. But getting there is chapter 3 in the book. So chapter 2 was my near-death experience, but there's more. If you can believe I withheld. But there's more stuff that happened, but that's the longest I've ever taken to tell it. And, then I bought a car, didn't know how to drive, didn't get a license. It was a stick, I don't know why. It was a Volkswagen Squareback, I dubbed it the Green Weenie, that's what it looked like. And I had a hamster named Toto. So I kept him in a bird cage. I thought it was cuter than a hamster cage. Strapped him into the seat, got into the Green Weenie, and headed west. I rolled over my mother, who is still lying in the driveway waiting for me to come home. It's what she calls the day I ran away. And if you've seen Rhoda, the beginning of that show ripped off my mom's statement because it's, I'm now going to be 59 next month, and my mother is still kicking, as we've determined, and she's still waiting for me to come home. And 3 kids and a husband later, I'm not sure that's going to happen, but she's still where she was. I get to go home when I go home. My bedroom furniture is there. My mom didn't change anything, still hoping I was going to come home. So anyway, got in the Green Weenie with Toto. About halfway to the I-70 toll booth, the reality of the fact that I'd really never been away from home except to go to college, and that hardly counted. Not in K-State, that was just an extension of home. That I was leaving, and that it was different. Until then, I had spent time actually looking at myself in the mirror, trying to see if I could see what was different about me. I was so darn different. But I was still terrified of change, and that's the weight of everything that was on me. I began to cry, and what Oprah calls the ugly cry. That, not the cute little blonde sniffles. Lips curled back, Tony could care less. I was really scared and unhappy and decided the whole thing was crazy. I was nuts. What am I doing? And out loud, crying the ugly cry, I was saying, I don't want to change. I hate change. I don't want to change. So we approached the I-70 toll booth thing, like I mentioned, and what does the big sign say? Change needed. That clever little boy, or thing, or it. So Toto was glad that part was over, but Toto was also having a problem because I didn't figure out how to get much more beyond second gear, so there's a lot of this going on. Toto just decided to roll up a ball and go for the ride of his life. And then we were headed across Kansas, and outside of Hays had a tornado. And where did I eventually wind up? Leaving out an enormous part of my life, which I hope you'll read about if you haven't already. I wound up where mountains met water. It was Seattle, Washington. Having tried Colorado, no water but mountains, and then down the hill, Salt Lake City, and Aunt Sophie there. She had the biggest laugh of any human ever born. I crawled into it. She's the one who said, honey, you've had a spiritual experience. And I had a word. I named my sofa, by the way, after her, God bless her soul, but I have a sofa you can just sink into. It's a very deliberate choice because that was the kind of laugh that my aunt had. And so Salt Lake City was mountains and water. I thought, I'll be Mormon. And but God said no to that. And off I went to Lake Tahoe. And it was actually one of the Smothers brothers I met there who gave me another word, service. You didn't think I actually worked for a while in Lake Tahoe. Becoming more of a hippie all the time, wound up eventually in San Francisco. No mountains, but some really steep hills and a lot of water. And this was now 1970, summer of. The summer of love had been, the year before. And I thought, this is where I should be. I was so filled with love. That's all I wanted. Unfortunately, there was a culture to groove on that. But I actually lived on Haight Street in San Francisco. And I thought, this is so ironic. I'm so filled with love, and I live on a street named Haight. Again, it's just the irony and the synchronicities. And they're out there all the time. It's just a matter, my awareness was higher. It had just been ratcheted up a lot. So I tell you all those details because I am Dorothy. Ta-da! I did leave Kansas with Toto. I had a tornado. Wound up in Seattle, which, by the way, like New York's called the Big Apple, Seattle's called the Emerald City. I mean, it's really, honest to goodness, that preceded me getting there. It's called the Emerald City. So I'm like, what if Dorothy decided to not go back to Kansas, but live with the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Wizard and have all these wild adventures? And that would be me if Dorothy stayed in Oz. So that led to A Shoe on the Ledge, which has become the most famous, bar none. I can't imagine a better story. I wound up getting a master's degree. I mean, once I got to Seattle, life became like living on the automatic door opener of the grocery store. The doors just flew open where I was supposed to go. And if they didn't fly open, they didn't keep me from walking into them and getting hurt. You know, it's just my way of learning. You know, getting smashed and then going, oh yeah, I should have gone over here. It was easy in the first place. The work within the work has been hard because working with dying people, especially if you're inventing things that didn't exist at all. There was no hospices. There was nothing. And I want to work with dying. Was just like, huh? So a lot of work within the work, but it brought me by April of 1977 to Harborview Medical Center. I was doing post-internship stuff. Actually, I was by then by able getting paid. And a woman named Maria was admitted to the hospital. I worked on critical care and coronary care. I only worked with dying people. Only worked with people who were resuscitated for the most part, unless it was crushing chest pain and they wanted to die. So Maria was a primarily non-English speaking migrant worker from Eastern Washington in the city for the first time, had herself a massive heart attack, brought to Harborview Medical Center. Such a busy place to this day, as then. Harborview Medical Center serves 1/4 of the land mass of the United States of America. So there were lots of things to do to help people who were dying and their families. So Maria, I got to know her because she didn't have any money. You know, time to call a social worker, ring the social work bell, and you know there was a language problem, needed translators, all that kind of stuff. So in the few days before she crumped, we spent a lot of time together, more than with my other patients at that time. But then one day Maria flatlined. I happened to be watching the monitors, so sitting in the monitor room. I was concerned about Maria because I liked her. Well, I was concerned about everybody. I liked everybody, including Maria. So I stood in the doorway. I was the baker's dozen. There were 12 people because it's a teaching hospital. So there were thundering herds. You've seen them now on plenty of TV shows. By the way, Grey's Anatomy is Harborview Medical Center. Dr. McDreamy, where was he when I worked there for 10 years? No. No, that's Hollywood for you. Saw none of that. Anyway, Maria was being resuscitated. It was a pretty easy resuscitation. I left the room after she was breathing on her own, but she was still unconscious. End of my workday, I got paged, went back up. Maria was awake. The nurse taking care of her thought she was so agitated that she would flip right back into cardiac arrest. So, you know, the social worker step in and make it all better. And so what I'm telling you is condensed from a lot of time from my bathroom buddies. Poquito Espanol. I mean, we were bad. But she had like, you know, zapato on the ledge, whatever. I knew what a shoe was. Zapato. Turns out, while she was out of body, 3 things happened. She found herself up here looking down on everything, told me correctly who was in the room, what the equipment was doing. I didn't believe her because I hadn't addressed my own near-death experience 7 years earlier. In fact, after I became a social worker, I pulled out my then DSM 1/2. I mean, it was a while ago. I thought, okay, schizophrenic, an unintegrated personality. I had all the words, you know. And then I got really scared once because there was this gal that looked like my age, a lot like me, in 2-point restraints in the emergency room. And I was curious why someone so young and sane looking was in restraints. And the psych intern said, oh, we're going to take her upstairs, which is lockup. because she feels like she's been going in and out of her body. I was like, because I was too. Plus seeing demons, plus seeing angels. That's, chapter 4 is demons, chapter 5 is angels, with just, tuition. So I, in the time we have, won't be able to go into all of that. But Maria, out of body, I knew something about that. And I wasn't going to tell because I might wind up in 2-point restraints up on the line. Talk about shutting down. I just stepped, every time I had a memory of quote unquote when I died, I would squash it. Because I would have to fully acknowledge my insanity. And that didn't feel good. So here was somebody I knew wasn't crazy telling me the same thing. So I decided, she was well educated by the nurses. She recognized voices. I was very skeptical. And then she found herself outside of the emergency room, floating above the door, told me about the ledge over the door, automatic door opening, one-way driveway. Again, it's a hospital. What, they're going to have a two-way street on an ambulance drive? Wouldn't that be a mess? And I didn't think about how she saw the doors open and all that, because she came in during the night, and I understand that she wasn't conscious. So, but then I thought, well, most doors would be automatic. I was just doing everything I could to make a liar out of her, basically. Then she said she found herself 3 or 4 stories above the ground, another part of the building, and she found herself, quote unquote, eyeball to shoelace. Dark blue tennis shoe. Large, little toe scuffed up. And in case I got it confused with any other tennis shoes that were out on the ledge of the hospital, the lace went under the heel. So I went, okay, this is fascinating information, Maria. And then she said, and I want you to get it. And it was way past my quitting time. I had Budweiser on my mind, not a tennis shoe. But I thought I'm a good social worker, so I went outside. Immense building with a sidewalk hugging the edge of the building. No way was I going to step out because, in fact, there was a two-way aspect, parking for the ambulances. And I called it the gauntlet because my car was always parked on the other side of this. And it was like, well, again, read the book. That's chapter 1. First paragraph, what it was like to even get to my office. So I was still hugging the building, and I thought, there's no shoe out here. Then I saw a bird landing on a ledge, and I couldn't see the bird anymore, so I thought, dang, I'm too close to the building, and I'm not going out there. So I went into the building. It's just my gracious good luck to have started on the opposite side, going in and out of rooms on the 3rd floor. It was just random. She said 3 or 4 stories above. There's a slope, so the basement looks like 1st floor, first like 2nd. It was very confusing for me, and so I thought it might be for her. But I got to a point where I was looking westward. All I could see was Puget Sound. It was called Harbor View. Medical Center still is for that reason. Olympic Mountains, one lone downtown building about a half mile away. And I had a decision to make before my forehead hit the glass and I was on the way. Because I know what it's like now to be so shocked that you can't keep your own body upright. It's like getting hit with a flour sack at the back of the knees. And everything went slow-mo on me as my head was heading towards the glass. And they involved Maria becoming a bird during resuscitation, which we only have 2 birds in Seattle, seagulls and crows. So if you've got garbage, bring it down. We can just toss our food out in the lawn, somebody flies by and picks it up. But I didn't think any of those birds were Maria. Then Smith Tower, half a mile away, I thought, okay, she got access to Smith Tower, never mind it's a locked building, and got to the upper floors into somebody's office with binoculars or telescope. Saw this dark blue tennis shoe with a lace under the edge and a little toe worn out, and thought, by golly, of course in Spanish, if I have a massive heart attack and wind up at that healthcare facility, I'm going to have so much fun with a social worker. But that just didn't seem possible because she hadn't been to town, she was unconscious, she hadn't been to Smith Tower that I could figure. So then as my head hit the glass, I said, this happened to me, and it was a watershed moment. My breath made a momentary fog. It just details when you're shocked, and so I thought there were 2 of us. And that became my purpose, my mission. I thought, if there's 2 of us, there's got to be more. This is not random. Maybe I'm not crazy. So I began to ask 3 questions that I have asked for 30 years. And I lead Seattle IONS, and it's a support group. And so we run about 2 near-death experiencers a month. They meet for 4 hours, so they've got a couple hours to share and get questions answered and whatever. And so here's the 3 questions, and I invite you to go out to any place and ask the same 3 of anybody. Well, if they indicate they have any kind of trauma. One is, what was life like before your near-death experience? Because I'm curious, interested. What happened during your near-death experience? And then sometimes it's, well, I felt a lot of pain. I mean, you know, nothing spiritual has happened that they remember. Or they'll just start telling you what happened. And then the 3rd question is, how has life changed since then? Just take the microphone. Shoot, she woke up. And people will tell you, people will answer those 3 questions. Well, until June of '77, I wasn't getting anything. You know, what was life like? Got lots of information about that. What happened to you during? I don't remember. Or I hit my head, or when the guy shot me, it really felt like fire. I mean, I wasn't getting anything until a 16-year-old who decided to cope with her boyfriend dumping her, overdosed on her mom's barbiturates. And was brought to Harborview, and when she came around, unlike Maria, who for 1 spoke Spanish, and for 2 sobbed for about 4 hours. And there were like words in between a lot of sobs, and I understood those sobs. It was back to the ugly cry. This gal was just as verbal as you could get. Of course, she was a teenage girl. All she needed was a phone. And then she would tell me anything. But she had made a suicide attempt, but what happened to her, she found herself in like an oversized chair with her oompa. Oompa was her grandfather who died before she was old enough to pronounce the word grandpa. It was oompa. And he said, you know, in the book, there's 2 names that have been changed in the book. I don't have a book with me. Mr. Zimmer, in the book, is Mr. Timmer, because I never found him to get signed off, hoping someone knows him. And then I never found Patty. She's Penny in the book. Patty is her real name. Again, hoping somebody would recognize Patty. But it's our grandfather Elderin just said, you know, Patty, you got to go back. This is not what's going to happen to you. And I thought, wow, an oompa. I mean, we've got tennis shoes, and I have a light, and she's got an oompa, and there were 3. And that's just how it all started. It was not... it was maybe predestined, but not by me. And that led to extraordinary interactions with people. Amazing stories. I'll tell you quick, because we only have quick. There will be dinner, but... oh, and then there's my favorite angel story, which I told last week. Diane, can I run that through again? That's nothing to do with your death experiences, but I came back again with, like I said, 1 fabulous gift. Well, maybe 2. Discernment. Discernment is a cool spiritual gift to have for many reasons. But that also is crazy making because I have visions and I see things. I had a vision in this room last time I was here. This was the day that John Ritter died. Remember television star? I was a John Ritter fan. Big time. You know, what can I say? Three's Company. Nothing else to say. And I thought he was a wonderful actor and comedian, and we had heard in the morning of my talk that he had died. But we didn't know why at that time. We just knew, John Ritter has died, headlines, off to Chicago Lions. So during the meditation that Diane was doing, even then, years ago, when I was last here, I was sitting back up there, and I had a vision of John Ritter lying naked, sorry John, on a metal slab, with blood everywhere, everywhere. So my mind goes to trauma. By the way, I'm always wrong interpreting my visions. So don't come to me for interpretation, but I'll tell you though, you know, who's hanging around you right now. And just don't ask me who they are. A C. I'm hearing a C. No, man, I wish. So I'm sitting back there, and then the meeting ends, and we hear that John Ritter has died of a heart attack. Well, that's not a bloody mess. So I thought, I'm crazy. I just keep going back to that. Turns out, though, we learned a couple of days later, it wasn't a heart attack, it was his aortic aneurysm burst. And that is a bloody mess. Yeah, if the blood's got to go somewhere. And so I thought, oh my gosh. And so it was here in this room I had a vision. And I have never told that story to anyone but Diane Willis. So this is, I'm sharing with you at first. Oh, and there's so much more. Want to hear my favorite angel story? Pity. I got to put this down again, sorry. I will be moving, Ted.
Okay.
All right. I have a problem with people who say, oh yes, I see angels, because I just don't see angels like that. I just can't chirp after I see an angel or a demon. It's like throw yourself on the ground and tremble for me. Everything stops. I would be a danger to myself and others if I saw angels in places that weren't safe. And by the way, the last time I saw an angel, this is in the book too, but with my eyeballs, I mean really clearly, and they're huge suckers. I got more detail in After the Light, and I am pushing the book for the first time in my life because I need the money, and I get $5 on every book, but then Chicago Ions gets a cut, so I might get $3. So bring it on, babies. I got deep pockets, and they're empty. So, when I have seen angels or demons, I mean, the knees go a-knocking. I become completely and immediately dysfunctional. So driving while seeing an angel is a really bad idea. But in fact, I was driving, and I had a little sports car, and was headed this way, towards my home from Harborview. And it was rush hour traffic, and we only have really one north-south road in Seattle, I-5. And it had a lot of lanes, and they were all filled. And all I could see off to the horizon were brake lights, which meant might as well turn on the oldie station and relax. Except for this yahoo next to me. No judgment here, of course. This guy next to me who must have been related to the Good Samaritan, because all I heard, because it was a nice day, windows down in Seattle, were these swear words. And this guy in the lane next to me, I guess thought that if he honked enough and swore enough, his lane of traffic would just go away. But it was bothering everyone else. I mean, it was worse than having a car alarm go off, because he was just playing it, but not that great. So I finally, in exasperation, now this would be, so I'm driving this way, headed south, but from this guy's perspective, I would be like this. So I finally think, who is this idiot? Or as my husband calls, his worst word to call anybody is dink. And he thinks he's a tough firefighter paramedic. Hey, you dink. I thought, is that the best you can do? Anyway, so this dink was, laying on his horn, leaning out his window, F-U-ing anybody, but between him and me was an angel. And again, all of the angels I have seen are huge. And they're like looking at water in a picture for me. I see features, I see roby things, I see movement, I've seen flying angels. I've seen angels fly like geese in wedges. I mean, fabulous, fabulous stuff. I've seen them come from my patients, literally. Swing low, sweet chariot. I mean, amazing, amazing creatures. And so I turn. Here's this guy. Honk, honk, ampa, ampa, Chicago rush hour. And you know that. Then I'm looking at an angel. And I'm so glad that we are in Brake Light City, because I would have plowed into somebody, because I cannot take my eyes off this angel. I never had an angel acknowledge me, ever, except for this one time. So I'm driving like this, and here's my face. And this angel fits in the car, but I mean huge. But he was like in a seat in the passenger side. And while I'm And I say he because I just got this masculine hit. I mean, I can't explain it. Some feminine, some androgynous, some masculine, some, I don't know what. Anyway, this invisibility that I could see turned to me, looked right at me and went, what can I do? He's my guy. I don't assign myself, lady. But it was wonderful because here was this man, not at his best. Let's put it that way. You call it road rage now, but didn't have that poignant of terms then. And yet, he had an angel with him who was there with him to do whatever. And I have seen angels working. And some of them are there to like trip us deliberately so that we learn to get up, either under our own steam or ask for help. There are angels. I have seen angels. Last time I saw an angel with my eyes, I was pregnant out to here, again on my way to a perfect 10-month pregnancy. I was about 2 months pregnant at the time. And that's how, I went into maternity clothes the moment the doctor said you're pregnant. And that skin stretching, you know, it was already there. I was primed to stretch for pregnancy, let me tell you. I'd already been blown up like a balloon. So, it was Christmas, and we had the co-founder of Seattle Alliance, Betty Preston, alive at that time, deceased now. Back off, Betty, I'm telling the story. No, I'm just kidding. We were listening to a piano concert. It was beautiful, and there was an angel on the piano. And I have a tendency to see angels around books, around playgrounds. That's no biggie. Well, of course, throughout hospitals, a lot of angels in hospital stories in the book. And places like that. So why not on a piano? Wouldn't angels just love music? It was beautiful. But right then, I felt the baby for the first time. It was felt. And I turned to Betty and I said, I just felt the baby. And it was like, I didn't know boy or girl, but something had entered me. And left again. But it's going in and out for a while. But anyway, entered in my awareness for the first time. And when I turned back around, the angel was still there. I could sense it like I'm sensing things all the time now, but I couldn't see it with my eyes. And I thought, what the heck? But I'm wondering, I don't think I could parent and see angels and demons, because for the same reasons that I've already described. It's way too distracting. So they're out there. I can give numbers if I'm tired enough, and I'm tired enough right now. Stress also leverages me into that kind of thinking. But again, that angel, I don't know if he was with a pianist or just was there to groove on the tunes or what. But my point is that when we come back, it's not alone. And there used to be this phrase that certain physicians would toss out about, oh, went to a box after a death. But that's not the case. We don't go along anywhere by ourselves. We don't pass over by ourselves. We're not there by ourselves. It's a little embarrassing if you have a figure problem in the bathroom going, is somebody watching? But that's not the case either. It's a wonderful, wonderful truth I am telling you, that we are all loved. No matter what we do, you cannot trip out. You can't do it. There's a life review. That's another lecture I hope you invite me back for. We're loved. We're not alone. And you're not here accidentally in this room, because I also know in my heart of hearts that people that are drawn here, not only are you supposed to be here now, but there's a reason, and it has to do with what you're going to do with this information and go forward with, paying it forward. So I invite you to do that. And if you've not had a near-death experience or any kind of similar experience, that's the way to get it. You pay it forward and then get high on the vibes. So I invite you to do so lovingly, carefully, not necessarily gently. Find somebody to hug, and I'm talking about what we call find the Easter egg hug. Whatever it takes, live your lives well, because it's all serving a purpose, as she's now out of the room. Thought I was going to wind up on a high note, and she's gone. So would you tell her? Thank you. And thank you for listening to me. I will never come this tired again. I had to be a mom first. I do love you, love Chicago, love the Midwest, hate the cold. God bless you. Thank you so much.
shame to turn her off. We gotta like listen for another hour or two, and she could go for another hour or two. But if you want to do that, then join us over at Ruby's, where we will be having dinner on Skokie Boulevard. And if you haven't gotten your copy of her book yet, be sure to pick one up, and she'd be glad to sign it for you, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to
in the
mention,
back.
yeah, certainly I would. And also, if you have already a hardback and it has a white binding, it's $40 on the internet because it's a binding error. Do not loan it out or give it away. It's like a God thing. How weird is that? The books in back are the 4th edition of that, and of course I will sign. And I can't go back with any. I brought 24, and I have a husband who's going to call me a dink if I come back with any whatsoever. So I'm doing a head count. It's all about the money, folks. It's not about the mission.
Tuition.
Yeah.
So if you would meet her in the back in the lobbies for signing, and can you take your stuff? We're going to close up the room.
Oh,
And experience.